Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey with Darcey and Stacey. Let's get to the show. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's get to the show.
In New York, Tom wanted the last word, I guess, to break up. So I felt like I had to block Tom from reaching out because what's the point? I don't want you anymore. I want to move on.
It's for the best.
Yeah. Don't need to go through that anymore. I think I deserve better. So I'm ready, getting in shape.
Right, so that's a common narrative that a lot of people say, including Darcey, is they will look back at past relationships and they will say, those guys were worthless. They were narcissistic, gaslighters, and I deserve something better. And yeah, sure, if that's how you see it, there's nothing inherently wrong with that point of view. But if that's as far as your analysis goes, it denies the part that you played in, one, choosing that person to date. There's something about your personality that was involved in choosing someone that was not good for you. And two, you participated in that relationship. There was something about that at least you could say, why did I fall in love with him so fast? But maybe Darcey did contribute to her relationship with with Tom and the way that it played out. I'm trying to remember all the details, and I don't know if I can answer that question as to how Darcey contributed to the downfall of their relationship. I mean, one thing you could say is Darcey was overly idealistic, which I think turned Tom off. It's hard to know what would have happened if she hadn't have done that in the past. That's what people will say to themselves. They'll say like, okay, I'm just going to not choose someone like Jesse. I'm going to not choose someone like Tom. And actually, if at the beginning of season 3, when Darcey was starting to date Tom, Darcey's 2 daughters and Darcey were out, I think, bowling. And Darcey was like, yeah, I'm going to London. I'm going to meet the man of my dreams. And I think, we might get married. And the 2 girls were like, well, pump the brakes. You said this exact same thing with Jesse, and you said this exact same thing with the other guys before that. So just take it slow, because it's probably not going to, they didn't say this, but the kids are saying, this probably isn't going to work out. And you thought all the other relationships were going to work out. So now, again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't want to date those kinds of people. But at the very least, you need to say, okay, what about my traumas, my relationship traumas growing up contributed to, one, me being attracted to those sorts of people, and two, the way that I contributed to the dynamic that played itself out. Now with Jesse, I can't imagine Darcey could have done anything that would have stopped the trajectory of that relationship. But with Tom, I think that there was some flexibility there that I think Darcey definitely did contribute to. I'm trying to remember what. I just remember thinking that when I was watching it. So, and a lot of therapy will actually involve this kind of discussion where you'll go to a therapist and you'll complain about your past relationships, and your therapist will validate you. Your therapist will say, yo, man, that person really sounds like a piece of work. Good for you for getting out of that relationship. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with validating and making someone feel better about their choices. But if that's as far as the therapy goes, then you're really missing an opportunity for the person to evaluate their own relational traumas, their own defense mechanisms, and how that plays a part in the problems in the past.
Really hot Bulgarian guy. So there's a lot of fish in the sea, and trust me, I'm swimming deep. But, one day I'll catch him. Or he'll catch me. How about that? He'll catch me this time. Whatever happens. I don't need to rush into anything.
Have fun. It's when you least expect it.
Exactly. Yeah. I just want to be happy. You say you're happy.
I am. I'm happy.
You sure?
Yeah, definitely. Because Florian, he'll be here in a few days. He's coming on the 11th.
So you definitely hear the competition, and we saw this in previous seasons between the 2 of them, which I find to be just incredibly unfortunate, given that the 2 of them could be such a support system for each other, and they are, but it's really unfortunate that they would add this competition between the 2 of them, because of course life is not a competition between siblings about who can have the hottest guy to marry, or who can have the best looking relationship to the outside world. And when I see this, and I think I hypothesized about this before, wonder if the love that was given to the two of them was not enough for either one of them. So whenever I see siblings fighting with each other, it's usually a result of the parents weren't giving the children enough love, and the kids felt that deprivation. They were like, I'm not getting enough love and attention. And then they would see their sibling getting some love and attention, although their sibling isn't also getting enough. But seeing that their sibling is getting the love and attention that they feel they deserve, then siblings end up turning on each other. And they'll bicker about anything. Now, certainly siblings can fight, but I have worked with many, many families, and one of the first things that I would find out to be true if I saw siblings fighting was a whole history of emotional neglect to children. Now, the emotional neglect can be very obvious, like through abuse and alcoholism, but it can also be very subtle through depression, through very hands-off parenting styles, through underlying coldness that is going on in the family system. And so I wonder if we'll learn more about that. But I just find that their competition is just so thick. You know, there's just so much there where the way that Darcey opened up that conversation, she's like, yeah, my guy, you know, she's talking about being happy. And then right away about she's meeting men online, and she is happy about that. And then I think what happens in her head, because we've seen this before, is she instantly goes to, well, my sister Stacy already has a hot guy, and I know that guy is hot, and I know that Stacy thinks that her fiance is hot. And so if my sister is going to have a hotter guy, and she already has a guy, and I don't have a guy, I'm already angry, because once again, my sister is getting more stuff than I am. Now, it's irrational because it's not like the universe is their dad, right? It's just circumstantial that the two of them are in different places with regards to a relationship. But because that's an early schema from 5 years old, 10 years old that you retain into adulthood, you just generally interpret everything through that lens. So whenever your sister has something better than you according to your perception, it's unfair, and you have to fight it, and you have to be hostile to your sibling because it's one of the only ways you can actually get some love. I wouldn't be surprised if when they were young, and this is a lot of speculation, if when, say, Dad was being nice to Stacy, that Darcey would actually like push Stacy down and say, Daddy, how come you don't pay attention to me? And then Daddy would actually reward that and pay attention to Darcey, and vice versa, or something along those lines. And then that gets translated into adult envy and fighting and competition.
Because I'm about to do something I know is going to piss off Darcey really bad. And I'm feeling really guilty. I'm basically putting my head in the lion's den. But I feel like I'm doing it for her best interest.
Okay, they're playing the scary music, and Stacy is saying that she's going to be doing something behind Darcey's back. I can't imagine this going well, but we'll find out.
I'm taking a risk. And I just hope I don't regret it.
Hey, Stacy.
Hi, Tom.
It certainly is surprising. Enter Tom.
What are these?
You didn't have to do that.
It's okay.
A few months ago, Darcey blocked Tom. He wrote this letter, but we tore it up. We didn't even read it. She hasn't talked to him since. But Tom's tried to reach out to me, but I just want to tell him to stop the communication.
Yeah, so when I saw him write that letter, I was hopeful that the letter would be nice. I didn't know what the letter actually said, but I think that there was at least some nice things in there. And I actually wanted if I was standing next to Darcey, I would say, Darcey, you should at least consider reading the letter. You don't have to get back together with Tom. You're done with Tom, clearly, and that makes a lot of sense. But maybe there's something in this letter that can actually repair some of the damage that he's done to you. That you have a narrative now that he hated you and he never really loved you. And this is something that is a problem in a lot of breakups. When a breakup doesn't go well, one or both people will walk away with a narrative that the other person never loved them. And that is a very destructive narrative. Now, it might be true, but often it's not. And when it's not true, what it does is it basically gives you this false notion that other people can use you or deceive you from day one. So it's not unusual to fall in love and to have a lot of feelings for someone, as I believe Tom did. Now, I know a lot of people accuse Tom of just trying to get on a TV show, and of course that's possible, but I don't know. I don't know if that's the way I like to think about people. It certainly could have been there, but anyway, the point is that according to my observation, my best guess is that Tom really did have feelings for Darcey. Whether or not he was in love or not, it's unclear, but I think he genuinely had affection for her in his very uptight way. And Darcey had a lot of feelings for him, and they were in a normal, infatuated feeling relationship. Whether or not they were in love or not, it's debatable, but then there was conflict, and there was, going away, coming back, going away, coming back. And the feelings started to erode for both people, and Tom for sure. And then he started dating that other woman. But I still think he still had some feelings for Darcey. When you actually hear the interviews with him, he dated the other woman, thinking that it actually would make Darcey jealous, so that Darcey would actually prove that she really loved him by chasing him down or something. Anyway, so there are two different narratives that I would say are available to us. One is that it's the Darcey narrative that Tom never loved me and is a terrible person. Okay, certainly, if that's what you want to decide, that's fine. But again, there's a consequence to that narrative moving forward. It's just like lack of trust in other people and more need for that denial of the pessimistic, nuanced viewpoint. You just have to believe, well, this is always going to work. It's all, I'm going to go into complete denial of what happened in the past, and I'm just moving forward, and I'm never going to do that again. And so that's the consequence of that narrative. The pro to having that narrative that he was a jerk is it's easier to get over the person because, there's no loss to moving on. There's no loss to ripping up that letter and say, well, he was a jerk face from the beginning. I'm done with him. Okay. The pros and cons to the narrative that I'm suggesting, I'm not saying that people should have this, but there's another narrative of we fell in love. It was real. He loved me. I loved him. Or he liked me. I liked him. There were some conflicts, and our affection for each other eroded until we broke up. So the pro to that narrative is you retain some trust in the universe and in other humans, because that narrative is much more hopeful about people, as opposed to just believing that he was trying to deceive me from the beginning. But the con to that narrative is it's much harder to move forward. It's much harder to move on from a relationship that had goodness in the beginning, but something went wrong between the two of us and it fell apart. It's much harder to move on because you think, well, we could get that back, couldn't we? We could go back there. And you end up waking up some days feeling like, oh, so much regret. If I had done things differently, if he had done things differently, and you're, quote unquote, dwelling on the past. But like I said, the pro to that narrative is retention of love and optimism and hope of other human beings. So now I wonder what's going to happen with this. Is Tom going to get back together with Darcey? At the very least, what I would like to have happen here is for Tom, because I believe that he actually genuinely was sorry for a lot of his behavior. And I think that because he did take responsibility and did not make excuses, which is kind of rare on 90 Day Fiancé. So what I would hope is that at the very least, Tom is able to communicate that effectively to Darcey, and Darcey is able to hear that, because I think that would help Darcey to have hope and then less worries, less of that very pessimistic schema that's underneath things, so that she doesn't have to go into denial so much, so she can have a more balanced, nuanced perspective moving forward. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Because I just don't want him back in her life What did you want to talk about?
I wanted to apologize to Darcey.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that you could tell her. I'm sorry. That was it.
Okay, so that's great. That's what he wants. He wants to apologize, and he wants to tell her how bad he feels, because I think that's what he's saying. Now, I wish he would go into more detail, as I often do. I wish Tom would say something like, I said so many bad things to her, and I just feel so much remorse. And I still care about her, and I don't want her to feel like I think those things about her. I was hurt and angry, and I said some things that I really just do not mean, and I'm so regretful of that. I wish he would say something like that. He's not likely to do that for two reasons. One is I think he comes from an uptight family. He seems to have been raised in an uptight manner, in a way that sort of denies one's spontaneity. The way that I role played it, there's a lot of spontaneity. There's a connection between my heart and my mouth and my expression, right? Some people are raised in a way, they're punished or neglected in a way where they have to suppress their spontaneity, and they come across as very uptight, and Tom definitely comes across that way. The other issue is that you have to be in touch with your emotional center, and I don't know if Tom was raised in a way that gave him that connection. So, but I think he has enough connection where he gets in touch with his sadness and remorse. So let's see how this works out.
I've tried numerous occasions to kind of put it right with Darcey, and she's blocked me, which really doesn't give me the opportunity to say what I want to. Stacey's more open to listening, I guess. So I'm hoping finally I might actually get to say what I want to.
I'm a little upset the way you guys ended it. I feel like I just need to let you know that I want the communication to stop. I just feel like there's no need for you to reach out to Darce.
No, I just...
let her move on. Let her have peace.
So there's some wisdom to that, of just like, look, she's trying to move on, pal. Like, just stop. Every time you try to contact her, it throws her into this bad mood, and it's not helpful. And she's tried multiple times to create boundaries with you, and you keep reaching out. It's coming across like forceful, and I know you care, which is great, but if you really care, you would stop trying to contact her, because it hurts her. So there's some wisdom to that. There's also some wisdom for Tom of just like, I feel bad, and I really want to get across to her how bad I feel, because I care about her. I don't think we're a good couple, but I do care about her as a human being, and I want her to know how bad I feel. Now, I wish he would pour that on instead of the very brief explanation that he gave, because maybe if he poured it on a little thicker, it would inspire Stacy to say, well, okay, and maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe there's a letter he can give, or, a recorded statement or something. I don't know.
And calling her fat or whatever, and just, it's not cool. It's not right.
Yeah, that was low. And the whole meeting her, I knew it was going to be like a bomb. So I was rude, and I was obnoxious, and I was unkind. I acted like a child.
Yeah.
I have to own that, and I have to live with it. And I can't take that back. But I didn't feel as though she loved me.
Oh, yes, she did.
You can say
Yes, she
that.
did.
Right, it's coming back to me now. His complaint about her, of which we don't have a lot of data on because it has to do with things that would happen away from the camera, is that he felt as though Darcey, never really was interested in him. That she never asked him questions, and she never seemed to be interested in who he was. Which, given Darcey's personality, I could see that happening maybe. Not because Darcey's a jerkface, but because I think Darcey is so in a world of defensiveness, because not defensiveness in arguments, but just a state of defense against deep, deep pain that I think she's feeling very often. I think that when you're distracted by your defenses of fashion and optimism and everything's going to be great, then that can make it so it's hard to slow down and really listen to someone else. Because, and again, this is a lot of speculation, if she slowed down and listened to Tom and really got to know him, she might learn that he's not perfect and that he isn't an awesome, all glowing, perfect angel of a human being, which lends itself to that nuanced point of view, which opens the door to the negativity, which opens the door to the deep despair of nothingness and terribleness that I think she's trying to avoid. I don't know. I'm speculating a lot here. But we did hear Tom talk about how he didn't feel really loved. And Stacy's saying, oh, yeah, she did love you. She did love you. And, maybe that'll help Tom to rewrite his narrative as well. So I wonder if we could really sit down with Tom and Darcey and really figure out what their life was like away from the cameras. I wonder if we would have more information about why Tom felt unloved. And then Tom talked about how he met that woman in Italy or something. I think she was Canadian, I'm not sure. And how she asked him questions and he felt loved. He felt someone was paying attention to him in a way that Darcey didn't. And that's what he meant during that cafe fight last season where he's like, well, this other woman loves me the way I want to be loved. And so Tom is trying to explain to Stacy right now, the reason why I was such a jerk face was because I didn't feel loved. I don't know if that's going to go over very well. He could say something like, I know that Darcey really cared about me, but there were times when I just felt like she didn't really take the time to get to know the person that I was, and I was so hurt by that. And I have issues, something along those lines, because I think the way he's arguing right now will just make Stacy think that Tom is a terrible person. Anyway.
She wears her heart on her sleeve, and she wanted a husband, somebody that's gonna love her unconditionally no matter what. She showed you the love.
But I didn't feel it. Jessie was like a cloud still hanging over us.
Yeah, but deep down she was over him, and
But I don't feel as though she was. And if she is, then why is she still talking about him?
So I don't like the way this conversation is going. Now Tom is trying to promote his thesis that she was never over Jessie, and now he's bringing up ammo that maybe she's tweeting about him or something. And now Stacy has to go into a state of trying to defend Darcey or something. That this is heading in a direction that I don't think is going to be very productive.
She doesn't bring it up she honestly, I never hear her talking about her ex. I never hear her.
Yeah, she did when she was with me, and that's the point.
I think she's in a happy place now. I think enough time has passed to where, I feel like she's opened her heart again.
But don't you think it's like from going to one to the next and then possibly to the next isn't the best thing for her? Do you want to be sat having this conversation with someone else in about 2 years' time?
So there is some wisdom to that for Darcey, she has a pattern that will probably result in more heartache and pain. Now, if she had gone to therapy, then that might actually prevent that from happening. Now, what Tom is proposing is that Darcey take a break from dating. And people will often say that. They'll be like, hey, why don't you take a break, get to know yourself, and let's take some time before you start dating again. Now, there's, I guess, some wisdom to that, but when you're alone, if you don't capitalize on that with a lot of therapy or something that approximates the function of therapy, which is self-discovery and healing, then being alone just means you're depriving yourself of a lot of needs. But of course, leaping into a relationship isn't the solution either because, like I said, the issues are just going to likely repeat itself. But waiting 2 years and not, doing self-exploration, deep self-exploration and healing, if you wait 2 years to start dating, well, that's not going to change anything either. You're just postponing the inevitable of a future train wreck. Now, sometimes train wrecks don't happen. Sometimes you do find that special someone that you just fit so well with that you don't provoke each other's traumas enough to make it go terribly wrong. So anyway, let's continue watching.
So what are you saying exactly?
In life, when we have baggage from previous relationships and we take them forward, doesn't necessarily bode well for that relationship. I don't want that for me. That's why I went to a therapist to sit down and talk about how I felt about things, why I did certain things. And I
Holy moly. This is the first time I have seen this in this show. As you know, I have been going crazy from the beginning saying, will someone please just go to therapy? There are professionals that can help you with this. And Tom, you made my week. This is fantastic. You went to therapy. You actually tried to change so that you wouldn't repeat the same problems that you've done your whole life. What a fantastic thing. Let's rewind that.
So what are you saying exactly?
in life, when we have baggage from previous relationships and we take them forward, doesn't necessarily bode well for that relationship. I don't want that for me. That's why I went to a therapist to sit down and talk about how I felt about things, why I did certain things. And I think maybe Darcey doing the same thing would help her in the long run. I just don't want her to make the same mistake again.
I've heard what you said, and it's a lot to process. And just want her to find love.
Well, thank you for coming.
So that would be a perfect opportunity for Stacy to say, you know what? You're onto something there. Good for you, Tom, going to therapy. Maybe I'll recommend that my sister go to therapy. You might be onto something there. But so many people consider therapy to be a punishment or for crazy people or something. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of therapists. Now, I'm a relational therapist, marriage and family therapist, and interpersonal therapist. For whatever reason, I've just gravitated towards, and a lot of people have gravitated towards me, who want to talk about their relationships. Other therapists, they attract people who want to talk about addictions, or other therapists attract people, or they want to talk with people about how to, improve their career or something. There's a lot of different types, schizophrenia is another area. For me, it's been attachment, it's been personality disorders, which is related to attachment. It's marriage, divorce, relationship, parenting, how to raise your kids, how to recover from traumas. It's in that kind of broad base of categories. And if you find a therapist like that, then there's a pretty good chance that something good will happen from it. Like I said, the two pillars of therapy in general is self-awareness, and because knowledge is power, and healing. And there's all sorts of jargon that people will use to essentially, in my view, describe those two pillars. With self-awareness, they'll talk about cognitive therapy or narrative therapy or Boehnian therapy, DBT. These things can be very much related to self-awareness, knowing yourself. Psychodynamic therapy is self-awareness based, learning about yourself, learning about your relationship patterns, learning your defenses, being able to control them a little bit better because you know about them. And then the healing portion, there's a lot of different therapeutic traditions that are related to that. Attachment-based therapy, interpersonal therapy, gestalt therapy, experiential therapy, existential therapy, behavioral therapy, systems theory kind of. So it all relates to those two things. And when you find the right therapist that does that kind of work, then there's so much great that can come from it. And Stacy seems to be resisting that idea. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't want to reveal too much about Darcey. Maybe Darcey is in therapy. I don't know. But I'm really happy for Tom that he is in therapy, and I really hope that it helps him, because I think that there is so much that Tom can do in therapy. Regarding the two pillars, one is self-awareness around the fact that he doesn't really know what he wants. And so knowing that you don't know what you want is a wonderful piece of self-awareness, because it explains a lot. It explains that, you don't really make decisions that feel very good to you. You seem to be reactive to what other people want from you rather than what generates from within. A lot of people, that's a very novel concept. They're like, wait, so when I make a big decision in life, are you telling me that part of the decision-making process involves me? Because I'm always reacting to other things. I'm always trying to, stave off disaster or please someone. Are you saying like I can be involved in this? And then the second thing that they'll say is, but I don't know what I want. And it's like, okay, we're going to embark in years of therapy to help you connect with who you are and what you want, because it's down there, and getting connection with that. So I really hope that he gets that in therapy. I also hope that in therapy he's able to heal from what I'm guessing, this is really a lot of speculation, is people barking at him when he was young. His sister seemed to be kind of in that role of telling him he doesn't know what he's doing. His ex-girlfriend was kind of that way. He seems to attract those kinds of people that bark at him and put him down. I would also love to see him in therapy get to know his spontaneous self, his emotional self. That seems to be, he seems to have a hard time connecting with that as well. So maybe we'll find out moving forward how Tom is going to do.
Whatever that's worth, but thank you.
Okay. I don't know if I want to tell Darcey about this meeting. I think she would feel hurt and betrayed that I went behind her back.
Well, I don't know why you didn't tell your sister. Why wouldn't you tell your sister, by the way, or even ask your sister? So Darcey, I have this impulse to meet up with Tom because I want to tell Tom to back off because I know he keeps contacting you and I know it keeps upsetting you. So do you want me to talk to him? Because I feel like that might help to get him to back off. Would that be good? Why wouldn't you ask your sister that? Why would you do this behind her back and then knowing, especially you're being filmed? So at the very least, Darcey is watching the show this week and just found out that you went behind her back. I mean, why would you do it that way? It just seemed, maybe we don't know much about Stacy's personality. Maybe this is part of it. I guess let's move forward and see. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle, in which I watched Darcey and Stacey. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.